Everyone called it burnout. I was there when something else quietly finished.
911, what's your emergency?
I worked production on one of the biggest live stream events of the year. It was the kind of operation that outsiders look at and assume is pure improvisation, chaos held together by energy drinks and luck. But that's not how these things actually function. This was 24 hours a day, no breaks, no silence, just cameras running continuously, numbers climbing on screens, noise filling every corner of the space. From the outside, through the lens that millions of viewers watched, it looked like organized chaos at best. From the inside, where I spent every shift, it was something else entirely. It was precise, timed down to the second, controlled in ways the audience never suspected. Every moment had a predetermined place in the flow, including the ones the audience never saw, the gaps between segments that looked like casual downtime but were actually carefully orchestrated transitions. I wasn't talent, I wasn't management or creative direction, I was infrastructure. The kind of role where you're trusted with access to everything, but expected to be invisible. My job involved clearing rooms before sensitive conversations, muting feeds during transitions, adjusting lighting configurations, checking audio levels, and disappearing completely before anyone in front of the camera noticed you were there. That's why I saw what others didn't. That's why I was positioned to observe patterns that viewers at home, watching the polished final product, could never detect. When the cameras were live and the red recording lights were illuminated, Cenat was exactly who millions of people expected him to be. He was loud in the right moments, sharp with his timing, magnetic in a way that seemed effortless but was clearly the result of years of practice and refinement. The kind of presence that fills a room on command, that draws attention naturally, that makes you forget anyone else exists in the frame. But the second the feed cut, even for just a few seconds during technical transitions or planned breaks, something fundamental changed in him. Cenat didn't relax the way normal people do when they think they're off camera. He didn't slump in his chair or make jokes with nearby crew members or pull out his phone to scroll mindlessly through notifications like every other content creator I'd ever worked with. Instead, he stayed still, perfectly still, maintaining his upright posture. His hands would rest exactly where they'd landed when the camera cut, not adjusting for comfort, not fidgeting or moving restlessly. His eyes remained forward, unfocused, not looking at anything in particular, but not quite closing either. It was like he was waiting for something to resume, some signal or instruction that had nothing to do with the stream itself. At first, I told myself it was simple exhaustion manifesting in an unusual way. Everyone working that event was running on nothing but caffeine, adrenaline, and the momentum of the project itself. Sleep deprivation does strange things to people. It rewires normal behavior patterns. It creates gaps in awareness and unusual responses to stimuli. But the more I observed Kai Cenat during those off-camera moments, the more I realized this wasn't what burnout or exhaustion actually looks like. Burnout is messy. It's irritability and mistakes and visible deterioration. This wasn't messy at all. This was clean, efficient, methodical, like someone had removed unnecessary processes from a system and left only the essential functions running. Between segments, during the technical intervals when we muted microphones and recalibrated lighting setups and made sure everything was ready for the next go-live moment, Cenat would sit alone in his chair while production crew moved around him quietly, working efficiently, speaking in low voices.
People would pass within a few feet of him, sometimes even addressing him directly to confirm timing or ask quick questions, and he would respond appropriately, but with a quality that felt slightly delayed, slightly off-tempo. I called his name once to let him know we were about to go live again in 30 seconds. It took him a beat longer than it should have to respond, like the signal carrying my voice to his awareness had to travel further than the physical distance between us would suggest. "Yeah," he said. A completely normal word, but the weight behind it felt wrong, felt like it came from somewhere deeper or more distant than it should have. As the event progressed hour after hour, as we moved through day cycles into night cycles and back again, the pattern became impossible to ignore once you'd noticed it. After big moments, after major guests appeared or significant milestone numbers were hit on the donation counter, Cenat didn't rise or celebrate in any sustained way. He reduced. His energy contracted rather than expanded. Encouragement from chat, from guests, from the crew around him didn't lift him up the way positive feedback normally affects performers. Instead, it seemed to settle him, to press him down slightly, to compress whatever animated him during live moments into something denser and quieter. Celebrities and major influencers came through in waves throughout the event, industry people with massive followings, musicians, actors, other streamers, all making appearances to boost the numbers and generate excitement. These visits always happened during muted feeds, always behind closed doors in the green room area or in private corners of the set. I never heard full conversations because that wasn't my role and I respected boundaries, but I caught fragments while holding doors open or killing audio feeds or adjusting equipment nearby. Small pieces of dialogue that individually meant nothing but collectively formed a pattern I couldn't stop noticing.
This part's always the hardest. One guest said that while putting a hand on Cenat's shoulder, speaking in a tone that suggested shared experience rather than sympathy. "You're doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing." That came from someone different, delivered like a reminder of terms already agreed upon. "Don't forget why you're here." Another variation from another visitor, phrased like both encouragement and warning. Different voices delivering these messages, different people from different backgrounds, but the same language, the same framework, like everyone was referencing an agreement that no one needed to explain because all parties already understood the terms completely. Cenat never asked questions during these interactions. He didn't seek clarification or push back or express confusion. He just nodded, smiled when appropriate, thanked them for coming, and afterward, every single time without exception, he would return to the same chair in the same position, resuming that same posture, that same stillness, that same quality of waiting for something that had nothing to do with the next segment or the next guest or the next milestone number. Late one night, probably around the 18 or 19-hour mark of the continuous stream, after a particularly high-profile guest had left through the back exit, I was told by the director to hold the room and make sure no one entered for a few minutes. The lights were dimmed to their lowest setting without going completely dark. The backup microphone that sometimes caught ambient audio was muted at the board. The chat watching from home thought the stream had lagged or that we were experiencing technical difficulties, and moderators were posting messages about being back soon. Cenat sat in his chair during this gap, this interval of supposed technical problems, for 9 full minutes without moving at all. I know it was 9 minutes because I was watching the clock, becoming increasingly uncomfortable with how motionless he remained. Not scrolling through his phone, not stretching his back or shoulders, not standing to walk around or get water, just existing in that space with that blank forward gaze, that perfect stillness, like a system on standby, waiting for the next command to initialize. When I finally told him we were about to go live again in 30 seconds, his response came after that same familiar delay I'd noticed before. Yeah, just that. Then, like someone had flipped a switch somewhere behind his eyes, the version that everyone loved snapped back into place instantly and completely. Energy returned, focus sharpened, precision in timing and delivery became immediately apparent.
He was back, performing at the level that had made him successful, and the chat absolutely exploded with excitement when the feed came back. Nobody watching from home noticed the 9 minutes of absolute silence and stillness that came before. Nobody registered the gap or questioned what had happened during the supposed technical difficulties. The performance resumed seamlessly, and the event continued forward. By that point in the stream, I wasn't watching for mistakes anymore. I wasn't monitoring for technical errors or checking that equipment functioned properly. I was watching for absence, watching for the spaces where something that should have been present wasn't there, watching how encouragement and praise never seemed to restore anything in Cenat, never refilled whatever was being spent during live moments, watching how language between him and the visiting celebrities had replaced genuine emotional connection or feeling, becoming purely transactional and referential, watching how everything around him, all the energy in the room, all the momentum of the event, had begun moving in the same direction, forward towards something that was never named but was clearly scheduled, clearly anticipated, clearly inevitable. When the big number finally hit, when the donation counter crossed the announced goal and surpassed it significantly, the room erupted exactly as you'd expect. Cheers from everyone present, applause, people hugging, chants of Cenat's name. The cameras captured it all beautifully. It looked like pure celebration, pure joy, pure vindication of effort and belief. Cenat smiled during this moment. He said thank you multiple times. He acknowledged the chat and the donors and everyone who had participated. And then, once the initial explosion of excitement had peaked and begun to subside naturally, he returned to the chair, not to celebrate further, not to bask in the achievement. He just sat down and resumed that familiar position. No release visible in his body language, no relief, no sense that something difficult had been completed successfully, just completion itself, just the end of a process, just a schedule fulfilled. Later, during one of the final hours as the event was winding down and we were preparing for the closing segments, I caught Cenat's eye for a brief second while adjusting a light that had been casting a shadow across his face. It was completely accidental, just a moment of eye contact that neither of us had intended. But in that brief connection, I saw his expression clearly without the camera-aware performance layered over it. There was no fear there, no panic or distress or call for help, just recognition, like we both understood in that moment that something had arrived empty, that some exchange had been completed, that whatever transaction this event represented had been successfully processed and finalized. The look wasn't asking me to do anything or say anything. It was just acknowledgement, mutual awareness of something that neither of us would speak about, but both of us had witnessed.
When Cenat eventually stepped away from streaming entirely, which happened gradually over the following months, the public narrative was clear and consistent. People called it burnout, healing, necessary rest, the kind of break that passionate creators sometimes need after pushing too hard for too long. Industry analysts talked about the sustainability of content creation. Mental health advocates praised him for recognizing his limits and prioritizing his well-being. Fans expressed support and understanding. The story everyone told and accepted and repeated was compassionate and reasonable and completely aligned with how we understand creative exhaustion in the modern era. But I don't think that's what actually happened. I don't think Cenat stepped away because he was tired or overwhelmed or needed to recover from intensity. I think he stepped away because the process was finished, because whatever exchange that event represented had been completed in full, because the terms of whatever agreement he'd entered, whatever arrangement those visiting celebrities kept referencing in their carefully worded encouragements, had been satisfied.
By the time the cameras stopped and the event concluded and everyone went home and the equipment was packed away and the space returned to normal, whatever had been exchanged was already done. The transaction was complete. The stream never turned off in a technical sense. The archive still exists. People can still watch the footage. The numbers are still there. The content remains. But something else, something that had been present during the live event, something that made Cenat who he was during those hours, didn't come all the way back after it ended. You can see it if you watch the later streams he did before quitting entirely. The precision is still there, the timing is still sharp, but the thing that made it feel alive, that made it feel like something was actually present behind the performance, that quality that made millions of people feel connected to a real person rather than a carefully constructed persona, that part didn't fully return. Something had left quietly while everyone was watching the spectacle, and what remained was just the mechanism still running, still performing, still executing the learned behaviors, but without the presence that had originally animated them.
The question isn't what Cenat gained while millions were watching. It's what quietly left when no one was.